Some wrestlers subscribe to Steven Still's philosophy of if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. Unfortunately, those trysts can have some real serious consequences. I'm Senor Siete for Savin Wrestling, and let's take a look at the 7 most shocking affairs in pro wrestling history. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and super kick the notification bell. Number 1. Edge and Lita. Well, let's get the most famous one out of the way first. Team Extreme was one of the most popular acts of the Attitude Era. You had the charismatic daredevil enigma Jeff Hardy, the coolest chick in school in Lita, and their dad Matt Hardy. Just kidding. Kinda. Anyhow, Matt and Lita were a couple in real life, and that found its way into their in-ring storylines. You know, typical things like Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson trying to steal Matt away, or Kane wanting Lita to give birth to his demon baby. You know, the usual. But it was when Matt Hardy was away with an injury that kind of soap opera stuff creeped into his real life. He discovered that his TLC buddy Edge had been engaging in some TLC of his own with Lita, and as you'd imagine, Matt did not take it well. He blew up on social media calling out both parties, and it made such a mess to the degree that it was affecting their in-ring work. Lita, who was arguably the most popular female on the roster, was greeted by thunderous chants of slut every time she appeared in the ring. The WWE asked Matt to cool it. He did not, and he was fired. But this is professional wrestling. If there's money to be made, fences can be mended. And so they were, with Hardy returning to WWE later that summer to enter into a program with his longtime girlfriend who had cheated on him and the man she had cheated on him with. Ain't the sport grand? And things probably worked out for the best for all parties in the long run. Lita was the missing ingredient to Edge's slimeball act, which helped propel him permanently into the main event scene. Matt and Edge both now have beautiful families, and Lita seems to be enjoying her post-WWE career, even making the occasional appearance with the crowd now once again fully on her side. Number 2. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. It's a tale as old as time. A guy drugs a girl during her bachelorette party so he can sneak her off to a Las Vegas wedding chapel to marry her unconscious body. All of this just so he can play the video at her actual wedding to piss off her father. Young love. That was the storyline anyways, as Triple H ruined the nuptials between the billion-dollar princess Stephanie McMahon and the tall Canadian guy Test. Vince McMahon was livid. He insisted Triple H annul the marriage immediately. Triple H agreed, but only if McMahon could defeat him in a street fight. Wrestling, am I right? Also, never mind the fact that Test should have been the one seeking revenge, but why make a new star where you can get even more McMahons on your TV? Anyhow, McMahon's attempt to protect his daughter's integrity would fall short when we learned that Stephanie was in fact evil. Also, she was mad about the time her father tried to sacrifice her in an evil wedding to The Undertaker. Wrestling is so much better than anything else. This launched the McMahon-Helmsley era where the duo would cause all kinds of trouble for the good guys. Apparently one good guy in particular. You see, in real life, Triple H and Chyna were a couple, and had been for quite some time. Also in real life, Stephanie and Hunter were starting to feel mushy feelings for one another. And when the boss's daughter runs off with your boyfriend, it's probably not going to be great for your career prospects. And it wasn't. A heartbroken Chyna would stick with the company through the rest of her contract, but she was never the featured star she had been before she was dumped. Add to that the fact that she was looking for money on par with top stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it seems like nobody in WWE management was too sad to see her go. Now she knows how Test felt. Number 3. Chris Benoit and Nancy Sullivan. The summer of 1996 was an awesome time to be a WCW fan. The Outsiders Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were creating havoc on a weekly basis in what would eventually turn into one of the greatest angles of all time when Hulk Hogan would join them to form the NWO. A small luchador named Rey Mysterio was setting the world on fire with maneuvers we'd never seen before, and Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan were engaging in a feud that a wrestling ring simply could not contain as they battled it out in jaw-dropping Falls Count Anywhere matches. What was originally a throwaway feud when Brian Pillman bailed for ECW and then WWF, the Benoit-Sullivan feud was intense and awesome. And then Booker Kevin Sullivan, the Booker is the person who basically writes all the stories, he thought he'd ratchet it up a bit by inferring that Benoit was sleeping with his off-screen wife, Nancy Sullivan. Now, keep in mind, this is very inside baseball stuff. People who just watched the show and didn't know anything about what was going on backstage only knew Nancy as Woman, the evil manager of the Four Horsemen. But in this era of worked shoots, a worked shoot is where they pretend something is real outside of the bounds of the actual TV show, Sullivan had his wife and Benoit actually start to hang out together, travel together, and so on to keep everybody, including the wrestlers, guessing as to what was really going on. And in an outcome that probably isn't super surprising, Chris Benoit and Nancy Sullivan started hooking up for real. It was said that Kevin Sullivan was the man who booked his own divorce. And the aftermath of all of this was just as real when Sullivan regained booking power in 2000. Benoit was so worried about working with his new wife's ex-husband that he, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko would jump to the WWF even though Benoit had just won the WCW World title. The whole mess drove yet another nail in WCW's coffin. Benoit would go on to have great success in WWE, eventually winning their world title, and he and Nancy, Just sucks. Number 4, Sting and Dark Journey. Now, the details are fuzzy on this one because it happened like a million years ago, so let's take it with a grain of salt. Or maybe, you know what, a whole salt shaker. But Sting? Really? Nobody has anything bad to say about Sting. But to hear Missy Hyatt tell the story, apparently Sting ended up spending a weekend with wrestling valet Dark Journey shortly after she left her boyfriend Dick Slater. In her book, The First Lady of Professional Wrestling, Hyatt writes, "Naturally, Slater found out about it, probably from Dark Journey herself, and naturally, he flipped out. The next week, he came storming into the dressing room looking for Sting, and he found him in the bathroom putting on his face paint. Slater beat the living crap out of him. Sting didn't even put up a fight, he just let himself get beat up. First, because he knew he'd been caught, and second, because he was just starting out in the business. And to hear the story told from other people, apparently Sting's face was lowered into a commode. Can't be good for the face paint." Years later, Dark Journey would confirm that the incident had happened, but denied that she had ever had relations with the man called Sting. Number 5, John Cena and Mickie James. Hustle, loyalty, and respect? I know a couple of people who might disagree with that middle term. In 2008, the leader of the C Nation and Trish Stratus's former crazed fan would have an on-screen romance as part of WWE storylines. It didn't last particularly long, but it did lead to some off-screen canoodling between the duo, which is a problem because Mickie James was engaged to former Spirit Squad member Kenny Dykstra, and Cena himself was seeing his high school sweetheart Elizabeth Huberdeau. Dykstra would break off the engagement with James upon hearing about the affair and would be fired from the company a year later. Cena would go on to marry Huberdeau in 2009. They would divorce in 2012 with Huberdeau believing Cena was once again being unfaithful. Her lawyer was looking for concrete evidence so they could challenge the prenuptial agreement. However, things were settled quietly out of court. And James would leave the WWE shortly thereafter and find success at Impact Wrestling, where she met and married Nick Aldis. Number 6, Kurt Angle and Dawn Marie. And, Kurt Angle and Kelly Kelly. Yo, listen! Who knew 4 little words could bring about such mayhem? Well, that was the case when Max Caster of The Acclaimed would accuse Jeff Jarrett of stealing Kurt Angle's wife Karen on an episode of AEW Dynamite. Kurt Angle, probably really hoping to let sleeping dogs lie, quickly tweeted for The Acclaimed to stop airing his dirty laundry on TNT. But it was too late. Can open, worms everywhere, Karen unleashed a tirade of tweets that must have made wrestling with a broken freaking neck feel like a walk in the freaking park. We can start here. My marriage to Kurt was over long before Jeff and I started seeing each other. We were legally separated at the time Kurt signed with TNA, living in different homes. We got back together and I tried to get over the affairs, among other things, that went on in our marriage, but obviously wasn't able. Funny and sad how all of that has been swept under the rug over all these years. Jeff didn't steal me from anyone, hashtag Dawn Marie, hashtag Kelly Kelly, hashtag Deanne Seiden, to name a few. Yikes. Karen was naming names. Remind me to never wrestle the Acclaimed. Number 7. Davey Boy Smith and Sunny. Sunny days. Those two words weren't necessarily the inciting incident that turned the Bret Hart-Shawn Michaels rivalry into a full-blown real-life feud, but they certainly threw a full gas can onto the fire. Those two words were Shawn Michaels' way of insinuating that the excellence of execution had been working on some chain wrestling with Florida's Most Wanted, Tammy Sunny Sytch. This was, of course, something that was not to be taken lightly, as Bret was currently married to the mother of his 4 children, Julie Hart. And according to Bret, it was an unwritten rule that you'd never throw another wrestler under the bus for something that happened on the road. And Hart was doubly incensed because both he and Sytch claimed there was never any physicality between the two of them. And with them sticking to their stories decades after the fact, it's probably the truth. But it's hilarious for a few reasons. One, Shawn Michaels was the one who was giving Sunny sweet chin music behind the scenes. 2, Bret admitted in his book, Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling, that he was cheating on Julie right and left. Just not with Sunny. And 3, Sunny was also getting the old victory roll from Bret's brother-in-law, Davey Boy Smith. That's right, the Hart family had all kinds of reasons to be annoyed with Mrs. Sytch, just not exactly why they thought they should be. So, maybe Diana Hart-Smith was onto something when she accused Shawn Michaels of putting the moves on her back in 1996. They obviously have very similar taste in women. Well, that's our list. Did we forget any famous wrestling affairs? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and press the notification bell. Until next time, I'm Senior Siete for Savin Wrestling saying bye-bye.